Hello lovelies, here's the video I intended to do today. Oh, Rifts. What can be said about Rifts that hasn't already been said? It's the AUDHD, or AUDHD, depending how you say it, maniac pixie nightmare girl of role-playing games. A post-apocalyptic setting of crashed realities, but one that takes itself more seriously than Gamma World or Cinnabar or Venger's diseased imaginings. It's much stranger and more peculiar than any of those. And the success, relatively speaking, over so many years of Rifts is a bit of a puzzler, especially over the long term, that it has been successful. A poorly laid out set of books with an archaic and Byzantine set of rules set in a world that seems like the horny and drug-addled visions of a teenage metal fan. Honestly, I thought I'd been over Rifts before, but according to my internal channel search, I haven't. This is the Ultimate Edition from 2005, which according to the internet is still the current edition. And that it hasn't changed much since 2005, and hadn't changed prior to that very much, tells you something about Rifts and Palladium as a whole, I think. Not that the Unlimited Edition is substantially different to what there was before, in any case. It's all very, very gradual and slight, the changes that you get. You could describe the Palladium philosophy as, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, I suppose. Taken to an extreme sort of level, with a wildly different opinion of what ain't broke means compared to most people. The system is still the creaking mass of D&D, but better. Homebrew that it always was. Their layout style, or lack thereof, has never really changed across any of their books particularly. And the Ultimate Edition just has a bit more material and some modern-ish art, including some delightfully old-fashioned colour plates. But then Palladium's black and white art was always a cut above, in my humble, well, not so humble opinion. Yeah, colour plates. God, when was the last time you saw those? Games Workshop Cthulhu Edition? Maybe? But is all this the secret of Palladium's success? Their steadfast refusal to change and modernise and update? I mean, just the fact that the Ultimate Edition was hardback was more changed than we'd seen in Palladium since their inception, pretty much, and it made this book as expensive as other people's core books, which previously had always been, the unique selling point of Palladium. Cheapness and the level of output that they provide. Very, very completist in a lot of ways. The Ultimate Edition starts in the year 109 PA, post-apocalypse, a century after the apocalypse. As a bunch of different realities and alternate Earths merged as they tore rifts between them. So this is a kitchen sink, rule of cool sort of setting that can be just about anything you want, all thrown together. America is dominated by a quasi-fascistic force called the Coalition States, who are fighting a constant war of expansion to reclaim America and purge alien and other influences on the world. They're also really super duper into skulls. They're not the only major power group, but they do tend to dominate in American campaigns, whether as the villains or, well, not heroes exactly, but protagonists. So they tend to be a big thing that's at least present in the background, if nothing else. Characters? Well, I hope you like classes, because this is a class-based system and a half with occupational character classes and racial character classes, showing its modded D&D heritage again. But there's a lot of them. Game balance is for pussies. Game balance can get fucked. A poverty-stricken city rat with rags on his back and little else, and a cyborg dragon can both be part of the same party, along with a wizard and a transformer and a superhero. And it's up to the games master to figure that shit out and ensure that everyone's skill sets are at least somewhat useful in any given adventure. But the city rat will still have to hide whenever combat kicks off, especially when mega damage weapons are involved. Each class has its own schizophrenic mess of special exceptions or rules, not to mention differing amounts of XP per level. And while there is an expansive content to the book, there's no fucking index. After a world primer of about 40 pages, you get a guide to the core book character classes that goes on for about 110 pages, then powers and magic for another 60 pages or so, then a bit more about the coalition states in particular and their particular character classes, and then eventually you get to the rules starting around page 270 or so, and I don't think we're particularly close to that yet. No, we're only at page 111. But there you go. Character creation is a long-winded process that will probably take you at least the hour that they suggest in the book, and quite often much longer, especially if you all have to share a core book while you're making up your characters, and then you may die almost immediately. So that's fun. Characters are defined by 8 attributes, as in most Palladium games, all Palladium games, I think. Intelligence quotient, mental endurance, mental affinity, physical strength, physical prowess, physical endurance, physical beauty, and speed. These are all 3d6, but complicating matters. If you roll a natural 16 to 18 while you're creating your characters, you can add another d6, and if that comes up a 6, you can add another d6, but then you have to stop. So starting stats can, in theory, range from 3 to 30. High stats give you bonuses in percentages to skills or sub-abilities, like Charm or Impress, which are tied to your stat. Low scores give you penalties, but the interplay of low stats and the skills it affects is even more complex and unforgiving than the bonuses. When it comes to combat, or at least damage, there are 3 kinds of damage. Your character has SDC. This is non-harmful damage. This is like Vitality used to be in D20. This is things like battering and bruises, near misses, parrying and hurting yourself. Stuff that doesn't really matter. Your hit points is your actual truly harmful damage, gaping, bleeding wounds and so on. And that's relatively low, depending on your stat, and then d6 per level. Then there's mega damage. Mega damage describes gigantic structures, high-tech buildings and vehicles and so on, and when it comes to weapon output, mega damage is its own thing. Mega damage weapons are required to hurt mega damage structures and armor and so on. So yeah, it's never really worked that well in my not so humble opinion, because there is this sharp divide between the two, and SDC weapons are not supposed to be able to harm mega damage things, which leads to some weird incidents with things like more primitive tanks not being able to harm a person in mega damage armor, body armor. So yeah. One thing Palladium has always been better at, I know that's surprising, is alignment. You can argue whether it's necessary at all, but their version of alignment is closer to personality and motivation than it is cosmic forces, like in D&D. So they have principled, scrupulous, unprincipled, anarchistic, aberrant, miscreant, and diabolic, or diabolic, as their alignments. And I find those more compelling and interesting than D&D alignments. But there you go. You basically get 2 good, 2 neutral-ish, and 3 evil alignments, because evil has more for some reason. When it comes to combat, we've already gone over the damage, but Rifts claims to have simple, quick, and realistic combat, but I find none of those claims to be true whatsoever. You could be the judge, but in a combat turn, you roll for initiative. The highest initiative rolls to strike. A roll of 1 to 4 is always a miss. A roll of 20 is an auto hit and a critical hit, and it can only be deflected if someone defends and also rolls a 20. Otherwise, your score with your bonuses is your attack roll, and that sets the difficulty for them to defend. The person being attacked can roll to dodge or parry, or to entangle an incoming attack, like a martial arts master who blocks and then binds up someone's arm. They can do that if they want. Parrying is automatic for some reason and doesn't use up actions, but any of the other effects do use up actions. So then when it comes to your turn, you might not have any attacks left. You then swap to the other character and do their attacks and defend the other way, and you switch back and forth until everyone's out of actions. It doesn't particularly describe especially well how this works with multiple opponents. They do say you can only defend yourself against up to 3 attackers. So that's something, I suppose. But the rules seem to suggest that you should just divide people up as evenly as possible and deal with it largely as one-on-one combat in so much as you can. So, yeah, Rifts. It's one of the few games and game worlds in existence that would have benefited from a D20 conversion back in the day. There is a Savage Worlds conversion, which I'm waiting to come back into stock, because I've ordered that, because I'm not a huge fan of Savage Worlds either, to be honest, but it does seem to be something that would fit Rifts better than Rifts' actual rules fit Rifts. I did have some success running Rifts as a Fate conversion, using scaling and so on from Starblazer Adventures, and so that all worked quite nicely. The use of Fate's stunts and traits and things made it all run a lot more smoothly and made it feel like the kind of high octane, over the top adventure that it's supposed to be, but isn't when you run it using the Rifts rules. So these are looks at older games aren't really reviews per se, but I still give review scores regardless. Style wise, I've always loved the artwork in Rifts, but honestly the older books are even better than this, which is still pretty good. The colour plates is another blast from the past that has its compensations, I suppose, but you can't get past the really, really outdated, ancient, old, uninteresting, unvisually stimulating layout. It's all, yeah, they were still using literal cut and paste rather than electronic cut and paste until somewhat recently. So, yeah, they never change, but would we really want them to? I don't know. So style-wise, I'm reluctant to give it a low score because it does very much know what it is. It has a strong style that carries through the writing, the presentation, the sheer amount of nonsense it throws at the wall to see what sticks. It's just the execution is kind of let down. It's as if the last 30 years of game design never happened when you open a Palladium book. So, style 3. For a core book, I also feel that far too much space is devoted to character classes and powers and things, and not enough to the world. But that's part and parcel of the system. But still, it feels like even for a, God, how many page? Nearly 400 page book, it feels lacking. But then there is so much supplementary material for Rifts that it makes up for it. But still, that makes the core book, substance-wise, reluctantly a 3. I would love to be able to give Rifts more as a score, but the system really gets in the way of everything, and it needs a modernization. I shall be interested to see the Savage Worlds version when it arrives, and what that can tell me more about what I think about Rifts on its own merits when the system gets out of the way. Zang. I have a fairly mellow Discord if you want to join us there for a bit of conversation and debate. We have people from all over, really, and for the most part, it's fairly good-natured and peaceful. As long as you come in that kind of spirit, you'll be fine.